Hello and welcome to the All Walks of Art Show, a series of casual conversations about creatives and artists from all walks of life. On today's episode, my good friend and regular on the show, Paul Remy, is here to talk about solo work, and we discuss the pros and cons of working alone on projects. Paul talks a little bit about his new solo project, Wood and Lightning, an album he's been working on for quite some time. I've got a copy of it right here. Without further ado, grab a tasty beverage, find a comfy chair, and enjoy the show. Here's just a lot to remember, right? This is why other people have stuff.
If you had that on a list right there where you could just look at, you would know as you were going there to start. That's
yeah,
really.
But then I would look ridiculous if I go someplace and I have it. All right, let's get started on this show. We've been like way deep into it.
Well, for when you're here, you got your list.
Right, this is actually good for this topic.
And then you could have it printed out.
It's almost
it
like
should be in part of your show notes. Should be the little square right there.
It's like we planned this. So today, like I said in the introduction, today's topic, this week's topic, is
today or this week.
Working both. It could be this day in history. You know, we're not doing that anymore. Working solo as a creative, right?
Yep.
And we'll do some other things here about it, but I do want to talk to you specifically about this topic because about the time this episode airs, goes public, gets published, whatever you want to call it, you're going to be close to doing some things.
Oh,
so
yes,
we'll get into that in a minute.
Yes, we will. Put some bass on my voice. On the bus.
I want to ask you real quick.
Yeah.
Why is it important that an artist of any kind, from all walks of life,
or all walks of art,
right? Why is it important that they have solo work?
Well, obviously for a musician, if you're used to working in an ensemble of some type of band, a duo, an orchestra.
Keep talking. Gear.
Jesus. No, doing something, get out of my frame. Doing something. I think it's important to branch out from what you're normally doing.
Yeah.
For one, to push yourself. I think that can help. You look at being in a band or being in a group as you're all fingers and you close and you become a fist, right? Mm-hmm. And as you branch out and you do other things, that can make that fist that much stronger because you're bringing those other things to the table. Also, it's good to kind of see if you can do it without collaboration or try to get your thought out, because anytime you do something and you're in a band, even if you're Dave Mustaine, somebody that's got all that control, when somebody else is doing something or you're doing it, it's going to get filtered somehow through another person. Mm-hmm. I think it's important to explore that, but it may not work. I think collaboration is the best way to do anything because you have that immediate feedback. You got that filter. If you're making music or you're making art with somebody and you're doing it together, you become bigger than the sum of your parts. As long as you're doing it right and your weaknesses become their strengths and their strengths become your strengths, whatever. You know what I'm trying to say here.
Right. You
complement each other. I think when you do solo stuff, you don't have that net, but it's also a good exercise to see, all right, well, this is all on me. This is what I'm coming up with. I don't have somebody else in the room tell me, well, that idea's not good. That vocal's not good. That we should add this. You don't have that other opinion. So I think it's very important, even if it's not something that you release, or if you're I guess a lot of visual artists, as we normally talk about, I guess they don't collaborate a whole lot. I mean, we talked about comic books in a previous episode. And you think about, you have an artist that draws it, but then you have a colorist or an inker. Mm-hmm. I think that's kind of interesting, that interplay. But
and a writer, and
right, and that's a collaboration. But if you're doing it yourself, I cannot remember a guy I met, but he had it was a very Asian influenced. Man, I wish I could remember the name because it was really, he had his own style. It was very like watercolor, kind of washed kind of look. And he drew it, he wrote it, he inked it, he did everything.
Wow.
And I'm sure that he had a lot of situations probably where he was tired of listening to somebody else's opinion and this and that. So, I mean,
Well,
that's my take on it. That's why I think it's important.
You actually brought up a really good point. I didn't think about too much in thinking about this show. Now, I don't plan these shows like we used to. When we used to, I'd get really deep and spend a lot of time planning. Now it's get the topic together and let me get a couple notes that I might be able to do. The goal for me is really to listen more and get perspectives and try to elaborate. And you'd mentioned that, visual artists don't often do this. Like if you're an oil painter in a studio, I get it. You don't really have a team, right? You are solo,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe not. You could probably work with your gallerists more and ask them, well, what's selling the most? What colors are doing well right now? And you look at the trends and things. And I don't want to say you have to be a trendy artist. That's not where I'm going with this. But, if you want to make more money,
like we always
you kind of have to go at it, right?
The fine line between art and commerce. And if you're trying to make money and you're trying to, it does come.
Money's not dirty. It's
right.
You're trying to make money so you can continue doing what you love to do.
Exactly.
That's the kind of the key there. And I think you should surround yourself with like-minded people so that you're not completely solo.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important. Even if you are working in your studio by yourself, I think it's good to bounce ideas off people. Not necessarily your mom. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but your mom's going to be biased and probably not tell you exactly what she needs to tell you. But one would be limited perspective. You're in a box, right? You're not really going out on your.
The pro to that is focused perspective. As you give these, I'm going to give you the.
Yeah, that's great. Let's do that. Lack of collaboration. This is why I love movies so much. There's so many creative people collaborating to create something, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've got a lighting guy, you've got grip guys, you got the director of photography, you got the director, the producers. Sometimes people would say the producers don't need to be there. I get that, but all of that works in tandem to create a product that we just kind of go to the movies and see.
But you've seen a lot of movies where too many other people had control, and then it lacked a centered focus. It lacked continuity because of that, because everybody was trying to get their ideas in.
Absolutely, yeah, and that comes down, to me, that comes down to the director of the movie itself.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not having full control. I hate to say it that way because I've never directed. I wouldn't know what it's like. It's probably like herding cats, honestly.
But you can see, you don't think of that with Tarantino. Tarantino, he's controlling the whole thing.
Yeah, but he's dealing with stars that have like massive egos, and you need that. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but he's dealing with stars that have incredible history. Can you imagine trying to direct Brad Pitt and saying, I need you to do this?
But a guy like him, he's got a proven track record, so I think that's a lot easier. It might have been hard at the beginning, but you think of the stars he had. I mean, he had Bruce Willis at the height of his career, but, John Travolta was he hadn't done anything good in a while.
Yeah.
Harvey Keitel, that's a guy that's got some gravitas, but it's not like he was a big box office draw at the time. So, but once he did that and they saw what he could do, same way with, Reservoir Dogs, I guess that was first, but, Michael Madsen and Chris Penn and some of these different ones, it's not like he didn't jump in working with stars that big. Now he's got a resume. Who the fuck is Brad Pitt? And I'm sure he's got that attitude. Yeah. But then you take a guy like Clint Eastwood, who I've been seeing a lot about different things that he's kind of famous for doing one take and he's happy with it. And he goes on. He don't go to the editor's room and stay over the guy's shoulder. He goes and golfs, lets the guy do his job.
Some of that might be age, though.
Well, it seemed like he's kind of always been less of he trusts his people he's working with.
That kind of flows into the same idea of the cons where you do get too many people, too many hands in the kitchen. And instead of making a simple meal that tastes great, now you've got a complicated too many ingredients in the and you can't really isolate the food. Now it just tastes like crap, right? Let me lead this into skill gaps, because I think that probably has a pretty good place in this, especially since we're talking about movies a little bit. But I want to get back on the music side of this too with you. There's a skill gap. At some level, if you're solo everything, right?
That's a real good point with my stuff.
Yeah, you kind of go, well, I need a guitar player who can do lead. I need a singer who can actually sing. I'm picking.
there.
Solo work as a band obviously just really doesn't work, in a lot of ways. As a musician, when you're in a band, it's a collaborative effort. When you decide, and I'm talking from a drummer's perspective because
so not a musician,
right? We don't. We don't do solo work unless you're,
Terry Bozzio.
Yeah. The thing is, you can stretch your wings a little bit. You've developed an audience for the sound that your band creates, and you want to do something different because it's creative.
Yep.
It's something you want to do. Tell me a little bit about why you do solo work and what you have coming up.
I just have always kind of been interested in like singer-songwriter kind of stuff and kind of writing from the heart. And sometimes some of that stuff fits in your band, some of it don't. And I also like taking it back to the basics where the musicians just used to travel the countryside and have a lute or a guitar, and they just played.
So you're going all Richie Blackmore on me here.
A little bit, but no, if it's a good song, it's a good song no matter what.
Yeah.
And I'd had some acoustic songs that I've been working on this album for 12 years. And I had hurt my voice. I had nodules, and I started seeing I'd been singing for years, and I was seeing a vocal coach in Columbus who was an alumni of the Ohio State OSU band or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it really taught me to be able to sing quiet. I never really could. I couldn't do it. I couldn't sing quiet. I do a lot of screaming metal and this and that, and I'm okay at it, whatever. But I couldn't sing quiet, soulful kind of stuff. I still don't feel like my voice lends itself to emotion a whole lot.
For some people listening, that they may not understand how hard that is, because in your head you have a tonality,
mm-hmm.
and you know that a certain amount of pressure goes through your vocal cords, and it has a certain tone in your head that makes it sound right to you.
Right.
And when you sing soft, it's not right.
Right. Or you're pushing too hard, or it just doesn't. So, I started out as a death metal vocalist. Really, I was doing backups and stuff, doing death vocals. So, it's been quite the art. But going through that and getting a little bit of training, and I learned I could do some of this. And I wrote a song. It's on the album. I think it's the worst song on the album, but it was the first song I ever wrote.
It's your cherry pie.
No, I don't think it will be. But I wrote, start to finish, and I thought, wow, I wrote a acoustic song. That's weird. I had never done that. I had written metal songs pretty much almost 100% or 90% myself, and had showed to the band, but it still got filtered.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that, and as life happens,
mm-hmm.
some other songs got written, and as you mentioned before, it's like I'm not a good guitar player. I'm okay. I can write on guitar, but I'm not a great lead player. But it was important to me that I do all the instruments. I'm not a piano player.
Well, that's the collaborative effort,
right? It's better if you get, hey, I'll get a guy that knows what he's doing,
yes,
and do this, and
even in solo work,
right? That's what you should do, but I didn't do that. It was important for me. And it's kind of sad in a way, because I had I'd sent out some demos to some people, and I heard, hey man, I could, well, actually they weren't demos. They were more, stuff that I pretty much had finished, but I was living with, I did a lot of that. It's been 12 years. So one of the songs on the album, I literally recorded in my home studio 12 or 13 years ago. And then another one I just recorded last summer. So I had some friends that were like, oh man, I'd love to put some guitar on this. And I was like, well, there is guitar on it. I played it. I let you hear it. You see what I'm saying? But I get where they were coming from, but I could tell they were not impressed with my guitar playing. And I thought about it. I was like, man, do I, is this going to make it better? Maybe. But is this what I want to see, what this sounds like with me doing it all? This is working through my limitations. And it sucks because, one of my musical collaborator of 30 years, Ryan Coyer, he was one of them that he wanted to do some stuff on this record. Now he's gone, and it sucks because it would have been cool to have some songs that he had done on. But at the same time, we have a body of work of, 5 albums through 3 different bands that we have our music on. Right. So I wanted to do this. I played, wrote, recorded every note myself, except for 2 songs that I recorded at the local studio here back when it was called the Recording Workshop. And I played, wrote, and performed every note there, but we recorded. Is it something that I want to do all the time? No, I like having that collaborative thing, but it is cool. And I'm going to do my first real show in April when I release the album. I've never done that. It's just going to be me and an acoustic guitar. And some of these songs on the album, they got drum programming, and they got lead guitar, and they got electric, and there's piano and keys. I've played and been friends with a lot of different people all over Ohio, and it just seems like our scene is just a little bit different.
And it's weird too, because it's not just music; it's the visual arts too.
Yeah,
because there's
a lot of creativity.
Yeah, there was a political cartoonist from the early 19th, 20th century that came from here and lived in a tiny little German brick home on one of the little streets we have, and he ended up making a career at the Columbus Dispatch, and he had made a comment how he just wanted to get back to Chillicothe one day, and it's kind of funny that he was nationally known as a political cartoonist, and even to this day, there's people here in town that don't know who he is.
I don't know who he is.
Sickles. His last name is Sickles. You touched on some things that made me think about limited resources too. That's a con for solo work, and I think creatives in general can tap into that. If we know it's a con, right? If we know it's a thing that we struggle with, be your own producer, be your own director, and say, okay, I don't have the resources to do this, but who does? Maybe I can get some help on this.
Right.
It's still a solo project. It's just now you're directing it.
It can also be a pro, though.
Yes,
because
absolutely.
Just like we've talked about see what you can do using limited colors.
Yeah.
Let's see what you can do using, I don't know how to do none of this stuff. I only know how to do it just enough to get me in trouble.
Well, you were mentioning you were wanting to do a YouTube thing where you sit down and talk to people, and I think that's fantastic. I think it's a great way to kind of go beyond just, these are very therapeutic for me. We've talked about that before. And I enjoy these conversations because it gets me out of my head. Right, it gets me out of my little box, and it makes me realize that, there's more to it than just getting up in the morning and making a painting,
right,
or a drawing or whatever.
Well, it's like it's right with solo work and collaboration. I feel like you and I are very much in tune and very much on the same page generally, but we look at the world totally different.
Oh yeah.
So it's really good to have that to bounce things off each other and bring devil's advocate into certain topics and things that are said.
Great movie, by the way.
It is a good movie.
I bought it because I had to have it.
Al Pacino.
Yeah.
Good times.
Yeah. Let's talk about some pros real quick.
All
so
right.
You mentioned some pros while I was talking about cons, but now let's talk about, we got about a minute. Let's do a real quick rapid thing.
Rapid fire.
Creative control. You have complete creative control over what you're doing as a solo opportunistic. I'm drinking.
Yeah. Con, no objectivity. You lose all that.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Personal growth. Come up with a con on that one, because I feel like there's a lot of personal growth with doing solo projects because you're uninhibited by everything else. And I think this is for me, this is the key with being a painter. A lot of folks ask, why'd you stop doing photography? Why did you? Well, the more money that I made as a photographer, the more people had their hands in what I made decisions on.
Yeah.
And it got irritating. It was like, well, I just want to create. I want to make stuff. I want to have fun. And I realized that I can have fun with all this camera gear and lighting and photography, video, whatever, audio, and still paint and use this stuff to paint and do what we're doing right now. This is very solo for me, obviously. But it led to a exponential amount of growth. Really.
Yeah.
I learned better with audio. I've grown up as a drummer knowing how to make audio work and how to run sound for different things. And I wouldn't call myself a sound guy. Obviously, there's people who are way good at this, but I understand it enough to be dangerous.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
Probably the best way to say it. We are out of time, but real quick, flexibility is a big one. Anything on that one?
Well, it's if you're open-ended and you're only dependent on you.
Yep.
You got all the time in the world.
Exactly.
Nothing's ever going to. It's
Exactly.
taken me 13 years to do this right.
Yes. Yeah. And if you had a producer, it'd be like, come on already.
Yeah.
Right. Ownership. You have full ownership over what you do as a solo creator. No one's going to tell you that you can't do it that
And if
way.
it sucks, I got nothing, no one to blame.
Exactly. Focus. Solo projects allow artists to focus solely on their own ideas and concepts without having to consider the preferences or perspectives of collaborators.
But you might miss some of the outlying things that can make it better.
Absolutely. I hope this was a good episode for everybody watching. Whether you're doing solo work or collaborative work, make sure that you kind of get in there and do some things and do both.
Yeah,
You're going to learn.
always.
You're going to learn from both.
As long as you're making art and you can bring stuff from the collaboration aspect of it to your solo stuff and stuff from your solo stuff to your
absolutely.
collab. So
Thanks for coming.
that's what she said.
Don't say that.
You said fuck earlier.
I know. Cheers, guys. We'll see you on the next one.